Welcome in college baseball central fans. Back again in the ACC. This time we're going down Tobacco Road. We got Grayson Boone here from NC State as well as Duke. Monty, Grayson, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm ready to talk some baseball. Excited to have a third guy on here. Grayson's going to be our contributor for NC State, but he also has his own podcast for all NC State sports. Grace, why don't you plug that real quick so that people know about it if they are anywhere.
I run a daily NC State podcast. We are Locked On Wolfpack. Myself and my co-host Kenton Gibbs, who's a former football defensive tackle for NC State. Monday through Friday, every single day, we have an episode out. Primarily football and basketball focused, of course, because that's the time of year. But I try and plug as much NC State baseball as I can because I am primarily a baseball guy. So with that being said, very happy to be on here with you guys. It's about that time of year. We're a little over a week away from some college baseball. A lot going on in the world of NC State right now, but happy to get into it after talking about Duke first.
We are going to go ahead and get this out of the way. Monty is wearing NC State-related stuff with the Trey Turner USA jersey. Grayson, obviously, with the NC State hat. So this is going to be completely unbiased as we break down Duke first. We're going to give Duke the limelight first. Monty, 12th year for Chris Pollard at Duke, 39-23, 16-13 in the ACC. Really kind of a renaissance year for Duke last year. They definitely exceeded expectations with a lot of the injuries that their staff had. I mean, they were implementing, I think, the first team to ever do an opener in college baseball. What did you see from Duke last year? This is kind of your wheelhouse.
And I really want to talk about the coaching job that Chris Pollard and their pitching coach Brady Kirkpatrick did. They lost their Saturday guy in the fall in Luke Fox. And then they turned around and in late March, they lost Jonathan Santucci for the year. So all of a sudden you lose your top two guys and you have to pivot. And that's what Duke did. And the coaching job on the pitching side was just absolutely insane. And that adversity is going to spill over into their success this year because they had to give a lot of experience to guys who succeeded last year. But now they're in position with a lot of experience this year, and it's just an incredible job for him. They were one game away from Omaha. Unfortunately, they ran into their in-conference rival in Virginia in the Super Regionals, but a phenomenal coaching job by Coach Pollard, and he's one of the best coaches around. Actually, his name was coming up in a lot of coaching searches for empty coaching positions. And he ended up staying in Duke, staying in Durham.
Yeah, I mean, they went into a very, very tough regional with Coastal, UNC Wilmington, and Rider. They came out on top in that. I know there were a lot of people, myself included, that thought that they had done enough to be a national seed. And then they were also in that driver's seat in that Charlottesville Super Regional. So exciting stuff from Duke ahead. They are replacing a few guys. Alex Mooney, who started 63 games for them. Jay Bashir started 59. MJ Metz, 58. Luke Storm obviously transferred to Texas and is now stepping away from baseball. He started 60 games for him. Damon Lux, 63. Giovanni DiGiacomo, the LSU transfer, is finally out of eligibility. It felt like he was in college baseball forever. Him and his 61 starts are gone. Alex Go, who started 17 games for them on the mound. And then Adam Butcher with 29 appearances. So Duke has a lot of guys to replace on that side.
On the offensive side, for sure. The big name for me is Alex Mooney because of just the leadership that he brought and the competitiveness. I think that's the biggest loss of all for them.
Yeah, and we'll kind of touch on it here in a little bit, but Giovanni DiGiacomo, his defense in center field, I think, is another very underrated aspect that Duke's going to miss a lot this year. So that's the name to watch. Grayson, who do you think Duke's going to miss the most from this lineup?
I go back to Jay Bashir's. It's really hard to replace a power bat like that. And, Duke had some transfers come into the program. A little bit funny of where they came from VMI and Harvard. But it's going to be tough, I think, for Duke to replace that kind of offensive production. But, going back to Chris Pollard here, I myself am a Chris Pollard guy. I think he does a tremendous job with this program. I have a lot of respect for Duke just down the street from NC State. They sort of embody the hot, cold, hot theory seemingly every year. And I really thought that they were going to sneak up on Virginia and make it to Omaha last year. But, Duke's pitching is probably going to be there just like it is nearly every single year. And more so the offense is really what I'm going to be looking for them to try and balance out.
Yeah, before we close the book on 2023 for Duke, Monty, what are you kind of grading this Duke season? Because I think they earned an A minus. They did just about everything that they could, given the hand that they were dealt, and I think it's going to be more of the same for Duke. They're going to be in it a lot this year.
I'm giving them an A. I don't think
Okay.
expectations were high for them in ahead of the season. I think they were picked by many to be in the bottom of the bottom four, perhaps even missing the ACC tournament. And not only did they not uh, fail, they
Yeah.
they were within a game of winning the Coastal. They were a game away from going to Omaha, and so I'm giving them an A. The colleges don't have A pluses, so I'm going with an A.
I mean, my college had A pluses, Monty. So maybe
No,
you just
no,
did.
because you can't have higher than a 4.0, so you can't have A pluses. 4 point, yeah, your college isn't real, Jake.
Grayson, how do you rate Duke's season last year?
I like the A. I think I'll probably go A as well. I mean, Duke, not predominantly a power team coming out of the ACC. Of course, the ACC is putting out fantastic baseball every year. Of course, anybody that's an SEC fan might kind of grunt when I say that. But Duke, like I said, I really thought they might just sneak up on Virginia last year in that super regional. So I think it's a great season for Duke. It's a season they can easily build off of coming into 2024. I was impressed.
As we jump into the lineup and Monty gets that graphic up, this really is a team that I feel like is the epitome of modern baseball. They brought in a ton of very underrated transfers, really didn't sell themselves short academically. So, if nothing else, I think that they're one of the smartest teams in college baseball coming into the season. And to me, it all starts behind the plate with Alex Stone back there. Senior started 62 games, hit 352 with 17 home runs and 62 RBIs. He's going to be the cornerstone piece that Duke looks to build off of this year.
Honestly, I can't believe he didn't get drafted. He's one of the most underrated catchers in the country. And it's a big, big thing for Duke to get him back with everyone else they lost. So I'm really happy they're able to get Alex Stone back. And that's what's interesting about these two teams as we talk about them. They're going to be led by their veteran catchers who are two of the best catchers in the country. Obviously, Cozart, when we talk about him later, he might be the best in the country. But Alex Stone is a really, really underrated guy. And again, I'm surprised somebody who hit over 300 with 16 doubles, 17 home runs, somebody like that doesn't get drafted with pretty good catcher defense. I was kind of surprised that he was back.
Yeah, I had very similar thoughts too as well. I thought he was somebody that we were going to have to expect somebody behind him to step up. But again, I don't think Duke fans are going to be complaining that his bat back there. Grayson, obviously Alex Stone is the starter. Is there anybody you kind of see behind him that you think could step up, maybe steal some at bats? I know Roman DiGiacomo is a name that we're kind of all become familiar with in college baseball. Is there anybody you see kind of stepping in, as that kind of change of pace guy?
I've also heard very good things about Winslow behind the plate, just a freshman, but rated pretty high in Perfect Game's freshman list. I think you could see him kind of as like a platooning type prospect. You might even see him in that DH spot for a significant portion of the year. But if you're looking for potential other options at catcher, I wouldn't be surprised if you hear Mason Winslow's name a lot.
Andrew Wu is another kind of defensive first guy. He played in 22 games last year, but the bat really isn't close to what Alex Stone is. But Monty, what were you going to say? Sorry about that.
I was going to say Andrew also made an appearance in the fall for NC State.
He did.
He did. Yeah. Randomly in the second game of the doubleheader, Andrew Wu went and switched sides for a couple innings and played for NC State against his teammates, and it was pretty awesome to see him throw out one of his teammates playing for NC State.
That's always fun to see. Moving on to the infield, this is going to be a ton of transfers. We project Ben Miller to be the starter. He's coming over from Penn. Zach Morris, not the one from Arkansas. This one's coming over from VMI. Logan Bravo at third, the Harvard transfer. And then Wallace Clark is back for his third year after transferring from Oklahoma. I think Wallace Clark is kind of the name you circle here. I mean, he really broke onto the scene when Oklahoma was running off to Omaha. He played third for them before moving over to short. The batting average took a dip when he moved over to short last year. So look for him to kind of have a bounce back year and kind of return to where he was back in 2022.
For me, it's got to be Ben Miller. And a fun fact about Ben Miller, he, I believe, is from Chapel Hill and grew up a diehard Tar Heel, went to Penn, and now finds himself as a Duke player. So I'm curious to see how he felt about the basketball game, if he's Duke through and through, or if he was still rooting for his UNC boys. But he's got a great power bat, and I think he's going to be really important for the middle of that order. Got a really, really nice swing and can hit for power. So I circle him if we're not, beyond Alex Stone and Mason Winslow at the catcher position. But Ben Miller for me is the guy I'm circling.
Yeah, Grayson, who stands out to you in this lineup?
I typically would probably double down on Wallace Clark, but to be different, I'll go with Zach Morris, who's a transfer second baseman from VMI. He can run a little bit. I believe he had 25 steals last year, if I'm not mistaken, with the Keydets, but he also hits for a decent average, hit for 309. He smacked 10 home runs, so could potentially be a spark of offense in this new look Duke lineup. But, especially replacing nearly your entire infield could be quite a challenge. I think Zach Morris could be a key piece for him.
And then not to leave out Logan Bravo. He started 44 games for Harvard last year, 298 average. So expect that to take a little bit of a dip. But again, he is a graduate transfer. The bat's developed there. I wouldn't expect to see too big of a drop off moving from Ivy to ACC. So look for his bat to kind of be another one that plays really well. 7 home runs, which I think kind of fits the model that Duke's trying to build this year of kind of contact first guys that really don't strike out a ton. But there's a lot to like with this Duke infield.
Yeah, I'm not as worried as I might have been a couple weeks ago. A couple weeks ago, you and I were on a podcast, and they asked us about how many runs Duke would score because they were worried about their offense. But the guys make the jump from the smaller conferences to the bigger conferences all the time. It's not as I don't think it's as big a jump. Obviously, it's not as big a jump as D2 or D3 to D1, but I don't think the talent gap is as big as we might think. And I think these guys are going to succeed. At least 2 of the 3 guys that are transferring from the smaller conferences. Obviously, Wallace Clark is transferring from a bigger one, but I think Logan Bravo, Zach Morris, and Ben Miller, I would expect at least two of the 3 to find major success, if not all 3.
Yeah, I mean, people forget Paul Skeens came over from Air Force and pretty much took over the college baseball world. So it's a lot easier than we can kind of project with the D3s and the Seaver Kings of the world. So definitely a lot to like from this Duke lineup. Monty, who's a guy that's not starting that you expect to see a lot of at-bats from?
So we already mentioned Mason Winslow in the catcher position. We're talking about the infield. So first, I'd say Mason Winslow is the first guy out of anybody. If as Grayson said, he probably is going to DH a bunch. He's that good a hitter. They're not going to want to wait for him. But Harrison Rogers, the graduate transfer, he's coming from D2. So we just talked about that jump. He's got some pop there, and 57 games, 361, 17 doubles, 15 home runs, 65 RBIs, 21 steals. Again, he's coming from Division II, so it's a bigger jump than what Morris, Miller, and Bravo are doing, but still another guy with a lot of college experience and a lot of upside that can be plugged in the infield. The rest of the infield, a bit on the little bit of experience side.
Jimmy Romano, I think, is another name to watch out for. He played in 22 games last year, mostly spot starting, didn't get a hit. So expect him to kind of be a defensive replacement or just kind of a filler guy. Grayson, who do you see from this from the second tier guys kind of making a step forward this year?
I think it could be a flurry of freshmen. They have a pretty decent selection of freshmen. All outfielders I would at least like to mention here. Chase Cruson, Kyle Johnson, Jimmy Evans actually is a D3 transfer. I think those are some names you could see in the mix. Again, looking for offense in this Duke roster, you could find maybe a younger guy could provide a spark.
Yeah, and we should mention too the trio of freshmen of Mike Miller, Cameron Poe, and Jeremy Raitt. We expect them all to be pitchers. But as we move on to the outfield, we'll go right to left here. AJ Garcia, the freshman, is who we project to start. Grazia. Sorry about that. My ADHD and everything is kind of making me envision words there. Grazia, the freshman in right. Devin Obi is in center, the junior. And then Tyler Albright, who started 51 games, hit 312 for him last year, kind of where it all starts. This is an outfield that I think was like Monty was saying. I think it's a little bit better than they kind of lead off, especially with Tyler Albright. Monty, who do you kind of see out of this group taking the next step?
So Devin Obi, he's a Cape Cod All-Star. He's going to get that chance to win the job in center field. I know Coach Pollard is still tweaking things, probably 9 days ahead of the season, trying to figure out what he's going to do. But Devin Obi is a guy who had a great summer. But the guy I really want to circle is Kyle Johnson. He is a legit two-way star. They originally were just after him for his pitching, and then in the fall they let him hit a little bit because they were told he could hit, and then he was very, very good, and now he's pushed himself into potentially being the starting right fielder and potentially the Sunday rotation guy. We'll talk about the pitchers on the other side, but that right field job is up for grabs, and Kyle Johnson, the freshman, very talented freshman, two-way star from Virginia, could take it. That's the guy I'm circling out of all these guys as an X factor as a freshman.
Grayson, you've kind of followed Monty on a lot of his takes tonight. Is that where you're going with as well?
Potentially. He already mentioned Devin Obi, so that's where I'm headed on this one. I think he could be a pretty solid fixture in center field for the Blue Devils. I think you might see him try and run a bit more if he can get on base consistently this year. He is a speedy guy, so I think he could be an electric type player if all pans out there.
Yeah, again, like I mentioned earlier, Giovanni DiGiacomo and his defense, I think, is going to be sorely missed. But I think Devin Obi is going to be the guy that we see kind of take over that role. And the speed is what really jumps out to me. And then Tyler Albright, I mean, his bat is very, very underrated for Duke. And I think he's going to be a middle-of-the-order guy for him. So really excited to see kind of where this lineup goes to take. Monty, before we jump on to pitchers, what would you kind of grade this lineup that Duke's going to be throwing out there this year?
I'd give it a B-. I think it's got a lot of upside. The problem is that we don't know, because it's a lot of guys that you're pulling in here. Albright and Stone are really the only regulars from last year back. Obi was a bench player, but I do like the outfield. There's a lot of depth there for three positions or four if they're including the DH, which again I think Winslow's going to be more of the DH. So they only have 3 spots for that talented outfield, because you've got Ben Weaver and Jimmy Evans, who are 2 transfers who could make some noise. But I'm gonna give them a B- that could go up, obviously, with the performance if it all comes together. It's a lot better than I think people think.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the phrase that we're saying a lot with this Duke, is they're better than you think that they are. I think Wallace Clark takes a big step forward. So I'm with you, Monty. I'm going to go B- with, I think it fits perfectly into Duke's system that they're building. Grayson, you going to join us in the B- club?
I'll stand just a little bit lower at C+, just because of some of the uncertainty. But I mean, Duke's getting a lot of love in the preseason polls. I think there's a lot of things to be excited about. I guess projectable growth in this squad in 2024. So I'll sit a little bit lower at C+, but again, you could see that rise pretty quickly.
Yep, Monty, go ahead and get that graphic up for pitchers.
Oh.
This is why Duke, I think, is rated so high, are these 3 guys right here. What were you going to say, Monty?
Well, I was just going to say, I know Coach Pollard has not figured out exactly what his rotation is going to be, but we do know Santucci is going to be that Friday night guy. You guys heard us earlier on in the broadcast. They only really lost 2 pitchers, and Andrew Gow and Adam Butcher. They bring everybody back, plus Santucci, who was missed for the second half of the year, and he has legit first-round potential. And he is apparently looking better than he ever has. I saw him pitch in the fall against NC State, actually, and he was really, really good in the first inning of work he had. Obviously, there was some rust in the second where he walked and then gave up a monster shot to Garrett Pennington, who we'll talk about when we talk about NC State. But he still had 6 strikeouts in those 2 innings of work, even though he was a little bit rusty. But I believe them if they're saying that it's the best that they've ever seen him look. It could be massive for Duke, and they, with all that experience they got from the guys that weren't named Santucci last year.
Yeah, and you mentioned that they have nothing outside of Santucci figured out, and I think that that's more of, hey, we liked a lot of the stuff that we saw in the fall, more of, oh my God, the sky's falling type situations. Jonathan Santucci, 50 strikeouts and only 29 in the 3rd innings. He did have those 16 walks, which I think is something that he really worked hard on in the fall, so that's something to watch out for. And then Fran O'Shell, I mean, that ERA is what's going to quickly jump out to you, the .69 and 39 in the 3rd innings. I think he's ready to take that next step forward and kind of move into the starter role as he came out of the bullpen a ton last year. But Grayson, who are you kind of seeing from this pitching lineup that really jumps out to you?
Yeah, you just nailed it in Fran O'Shell. He's nasty, man. I think he's really going to burst onto the scene as a starter this year for Duke. And, he could really develop into a workhorse type, maybe gets the bulk of the Saturday starts, but he has the talent to be even a Friday night guy if maybe Santucci doesn't quite work out. But I think O'Shell is probably the name to watch for Duke's starting rotation.
So we got some comments real quick. Santucci is confirmed he's not going to hit for Duke. Coach Pollard mentioned that. So Santucci he hit a little bit in his first 2 years. He's only focused on pitching this year, so he's not going to be hitting for Duke. And then Fran O'Shell, we are not sure he's going to be used in an SP role. Coach Pollard is not sure he's going to be used in a starting role. There are a number of guys who could take the Sunday role if they move Healy into the Saturday role. Kyle Johnson could be that guy. Both Emis or Higgins could be that guy. Aiden Weaver could be that guy. So there's a lot of question marks with Duke, and I'm sure they're still trying to figure that out with 9 days to go, but it's an embarrassment of riches for Coach Pollard.
Yeah, I think Kyle Johnson and Cameron Poe are the two names to watch out for. I think one of them is the Sunday guy. If they end up going with O'Shell and kind of a bullpen role, and the other kind of being a Tuesday guy. But again, Duke has an embarrassment of riches with the freshmen that they brought in, and it really is kind of a testament to the work that they did on the recruiting trail to build such a strong staff. But again, go ahead, Monty.
I mean, we haven't even talked about James Talon, who was one of the best closers
that
in
was
the
a great
country
segue.
last year.
You're reading my mind.
Yeah.
I was like, I think that the only thing that we can guarantee is that he's going to be the closer. He saved 12 games for him at the back end of that bullpen, 23 appearances, 1.64 ERA with 54 strikeouts, only 33 innings of work. I think you can go ahead and pencil him to be the ninth inning, turn off the light kind of guy.
Are you guys ready for my favorite Fran O'Shell stat from last year?
I'm ready.
All right. When he had runners on base, hitters were 3 for 56 against him.
Ooh.
Sounds like my
and supposedly career. Yeah, and supposedly he's gotten better. He's added some pitches, trying to get a third pitch mixed in there. So, and then with Talon, they're working on another pitch because he's primarily fastballs. So they're going to get better. And then you still have guys like Proch and Bielenson and Higgins and Weaver, and then transfers like Emis and Noon. It's just, and then the freshmen that we didn't even get to. This is why Duke is ranked in the top 15.
Yeah, you mentioned Emis. I think he's the one name, the Princeton transfer, that a lot of people are overlooking. I know the ERA was really high for him, but he had one of the lower opponent's batting averages, and he really kind of did fall susceptible to kind of the one big hit theory. So look for him to kind of take a step forward and drop that ERA despite coming over for just the Ivy League. That's the name that I'm circling in this bullpen.
I'm ready to ask a question of Grayson here and of you, Jake, but Grayson first. From top to bottom, is this Duke pitching staff, from the starting rotation to the key bullpen arms to the potential freshman arms, is this a more complete staff than what Wake Forest has right now on paper?
Ooh, I'm going to have to lean no, but I think it's closer than you might think. I think Duke's pitching staff might surprise some people this year. I mean, nearly no one can touch Wake Forest and what they got going on. I mean, that's a story for another time. But I think, like you mentioned, Duke's pitching staff is going to be a lot better than you might think it is.
Monty, we have this from
just a simple no. Just a simple no. I love that. Jake, what do you think?
I'm going to say no as well, but I'm going to go out on what is quote unquote a bold take. I think this is a deeper staff than LSU has, and LSU has one of the more talented staffs in the country. I would put this staff above LSU.
I'm gonna put it above Wake Forest. Wake Forest is gonna be really top heavy with those 3 starters, but I think the way the bullpen and the freshman arms are with Duke is gonna push them over. Santucci and Healy as a 1-2 punch, I love it. So and Pittsburgh Bob 69, he said Peter Gallo, who's a grad transfer we didn't even mention, who's not even listed on our sheet. He is in our spreadsheet, but not on the presentation. He's been lighting it up this fall. So he was hitting something like 97 miles an hour. So thanks for the info, Pittsburgh Bob. So you've got, I think from top to bottom, I think they have a deeper staff. I think this is the deepest staff in the country for me. That's
my deeper or better, Monty?
Careful.
Both.
Both. I just wanted you to clarify,
especially with Cole Rowland going down for Wake Forest too. That makes them a little bit less. I mean, he's out for I think 6 to 8 weeks or something for Wake Forest. So I think they're better and deeper, and that's why they're going to Omaha.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like about this this Duke rotation, and honestly, I think you're kind of talking me into it, Monty. I kind of see where you're going with the Wake Forest stuff. I think it is a very, very deep rotation, and they are going to have an embarrassment at riches. And like we saw with LSU in that lineup, the best end up getting on the field.
Yeah, now I just got to work on Grayson a little bit more. Get him on my side. Just convince everybody.
Good luck. Good luck. See what's on my head. Good luck.
Well, the good news is the opening. This is a great segue because we're talking schedule, and guess who the opening series is for Duke? It is Wake Forest on the road on March 8th to March 10th. I am planning to be there hopefully for the Sunday matchup. I might be there for the Saturday. Who knows? Right now, I've got a lot on my schedule, but I do hope to be there. Shout out to Nick, one of our new guys. His family owns a sandwich shop. I already looked at their menu. I'm already excited to get to Winston-Salem and get a Dioli sandwich. The chicken parm is calling my name, but that Wake Forest series, and then we're going to find out real quickly how good their pitching is as those two teams go head to head. There might be 10 total runs scored between both teams the entire series.
Yeah, is there anybody in the ACC that has a tougher opening slate than Wake, Clemson, NC State, Virginia? I mean, if they can get through those early season matchups, I think they have a chance to rise really fast in our top 25. And Monty, I know that you kind of jumped straight into the ACC, but that opening game against Indiana, I think we're going to learn a lot about this Duke staff. As Indiana has one of the best lineups in the country. They're playing in the baseball at the beach tournament, so they'll also play Coastal that weekend. So that's another thing to kind of watch is how Duke navigates that Indiana lineup.
3 tournament teams, but I just jumped into ACC because it was a good segue.
4 if you include George Mason. George Mason was in the tournament last year.
Well, that's what I was talking about. They're playing 3. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. They're not playing themselves.
That is true. Outside of that, I mean, not a lot to get excited about. They play arguably the worst Power 5 team in the country in Northwestern, and then a series at Akron before that Wake Forest game. But again, I think everybody is kind of circling that Wake Forest series. Is it's going to be a prove it for Duke and a show me what you got series for Wake. Grayson, obviously the one with NC State. They play North Carolina. What's the weekend that you kind of jump out with this Duke team?
I don't know if I can narrow it down to just one weekend, but the first 4 weekends you talked about in the ACC, that's really what jumps out to me. That's an absolute gauntlet to have to play in just March, basically. If they can survive, and I mean, depending on how you classify survive, if they can survive that first 4-week stretch, they find themselves in a pretty favorable back half of that schedule. So, in addition to having to go through quite a gauntlet, they're going to find out pretty quickly what kind of team they have. Probably the beginning of April, they're really going to know what they have under the hood.
Yeah, and they're going to get 2 RPI bumps late in the season as they play the nobodies from nowhere in Campbell, and then a road game against Eastern Carolina down there at Clark LeClaire. So they're not going to have that kind of, hey, we played a crappy team and our RPI takes a dip. They're going to be in the complete opposite boat where their RPI is going to jump there late in the season. And the schedule from a scheduling standpoint is not something that I think Duke has to worry about. I think if they run the table, and I think the schedule is going to give them a lot of leeway with their record. I would even go as far as to say they might be the team with the worst record that hosts. That's kind of my bold take there.
Well, and speaking of hosting, is their stadium going to be good enough to host? Because remember, this year they're not going to be at the Durham Bulls Athletic Park at all. It'll be all at Jack Combs Field. So I'll be getting out there. I'll see how it is. I'll let them know if they're able to host. No, it's going to be, that could be easier for them because they're not going to be playing on 2 different home fields. I know that can be kind of weird, to kind of split your time. As good as the DPAP is, it might be helpful for them to be on campus, all season for their home games. So that could make a difference. And I'm excited to see this Duke baseball team.
Bonnie, before we jump over to NC State, ceiling, floor, and prediction for Duke.
I think they could host, and I could see them in Omaha for the first time since 1961. That's their ceiling. Their floor is, I think their floor is they are a 3 seed somewhere if things don't go well, but I don't see them missing the tournament.
Yeah, I think their ceiling is definitely in Omaha, a lot like Wake Forest was last year. I think that their floor is a 2 seed, kind of how they were last year, and a very, very exciting kind of mid-major. I think that's really the only thing that's going to hold them back in hosting. Is we saw last year the committee put an emphasis about schools not hosting a ton in North Carolina and South Carolina, and there's just so many talented teams there that have the talent to host. I think that's really the only thing that holds Duke back. My prediction is I think that they host.
Mark says Omaha, Omaha.
Grayson, where do you see
Peyton
floor
Manning.
ceiling predictions?
Yeah, following along the same lines here, I think the ceiling you could see them in Omaha, but I think probably the most likely scenario is you'll probably see them in Super Regional Weekend. Will they host? I don't know. I think they might narrowly miss out on that. The floor, probably a 3 seed. I think this team has plenty of talent to obviously make the tournament, but once they get in, you could see them make a run. Just depends on who they get lined up against.
And that pitching staff.
They have the luxury to not get in that Sunday shootout game that we see a lot in the tournaments. All right, Monty, let's go ahead and jump over to NC State. I'm sure Grace and Monty, this will be the next hour of the show. Started off, Elliott Avent, 28th year, 998 wins. So expect those to be 1,000 pretty fast. 36-21, 13-16 in the ACC. Series wins over, bottom feeders Florida State, Louisville, and Notre Dame. But they made it to a Columbia Regional as a 3 seed, where they beat number 2 Campbell before losing to South Carolina and were eliminated in their rematch against Campbell. I think we always have to get this out of the way. The NCAA hates NC State for some reason. I feel like we always need to bring that up. But, we'll start with you, Grayson. How would you kind of rank this NC State team based on what you saw last year and what we were going to see this year from them?
I believe the key word is probably hope in coming into 2024. 2023, you had some bright spots, you had some low spots, and you had a lot in between. Obviously made it back to the tournament, although kind of felt like we might be close to the bubble there. Made it into the tournament. You were able to beat Campbell, which caused excitement, and then you kind of fall apart against South Carolina and then Campbell the second time. It kind of encapsulated the season, and you played some really good baseball in some key stretches, and then there was a lot left to be desired in some other ones. And so it was a very up and down year. It kind of modeled after 2022 as well, except for actually made the tournament in the end instead of getting screwed there. But it was up and down here and there. I think there's a lot of talent that left, but there's a lot of key talent that also arrives here, which causes for some excitement.
Yeah, you mentioned the guys that left. Oh, go ahead, Monty.
I was just going to say, Mark's calling Grayson out in the comments pretty bad right now. Yeah, he said
I love them, and that's why.
Yeah, I was like, man, Mark is coming for you. Sorry, Jake. Go ahead. I just wanted to make sure that I was just seeing that, and I was like, man, I don't think Grayson knows.
If I can get NC State to win something, I'll just quit being an NC State fan. It means that much to me. I'll take one for the team.
Well, I mean, that's a pretty bold take. Maybe you'll do like Cannon Peebles did and leave and go to the SEC and be a fan of them. Other losses, Jaden Grover's heading over to drafted by Arizona. Cannon Peebles, like I mentioned, headed to Tennessee, likely going to be their starting catcher. Peyton Green transferred to ACC rival Georgia Tech. Kai Harrison, who started 57 games for them after transferring from A&M, him and his .313 bat have graduated. Will Marcy, who hit .301, 45 games. Trevor Candelaria, 51 games, hit that .295 average. Parker Nolan at 51 games. And then the pitchers, Justin Lawson with 27 appearances, Rio Britton with 22, Baker Nelson with 27. I'll go ahead and start with myself. I know that kind of sounds weird to say. I think Cannon Peebles is going to be a name that is missed in this lineup. I think he's going to be a very big loss and somebody that NC State, every single time that they lose or score under 2-3 runs, that's going to be something where they're like, hey, man, if we had Cannon Peebles, we would have been in this game a little bit more. Monty, who do you think they're going to miss the most?
Real quick, Tyler Jennings just mentioned that Kalai Harrison signed with Pittsburgh. Just a heads up. So, but I went and saw them play Duke and at the DPAP in the fall, and I am all in. I got way too excited by the hype of a fall game. I didn't see their follow up against Walter State, which I think was a little bit less of an impressive showing, but they're going to be missing a lot from this offense. And if you hear if you watch the Duke segment, you're going to see a lot of similarities. We just went through their departures, and it's very similar to Duke. They are losing a lot from that lineup. They are anchored by the nation's best catcher, and their strength is going to be in their pitching staff, right? So it's a lot to miss, but that's a lot of power. I believe they're losing everyone except Cozart, who hit double-digit home runs last year. So everyone who hit over 10 home runs except for Jacob Cozart is gone. So they've got to find a way to replace that power. Gino Groover is going to be missed. Cannon Peoples is definitely going to be missed, but you're losing a lot of guys who were quietly very productive.
Yeah, Kai Harrison, I think, is another one that kind of falls into that quietly productive, as he really struggled at A&M and found his bat later in his career, hitting over 301. Grayson, who are you going to miss the most from 2023?
Well, I think my definitive answer is Cannon Peebles, as he was our most consistent and effective hitter. I can't believe I'm going to mention this on here, but we lost Tommy Tanks after 2022. We lost a cannon in 2023. If any NC State baseball players are listening to this and you have some kind of nickname related to armament, change your nickname, because we can't afford to lose you in 2024. But now, in addition to Peebles, Groover as well. He was a very steady third baseman, a solid bat to add in there. A lot of pieces to replace, but I'm way more excited about what came in than what is left.
Yeah, so you don't want us to give someone an armament nickname on this show?
Yeah, Monty, right? I was going to say, I think it's our duty now to give one of these a militaristic
we'll very vanilla nicknames, no cool lasers or nothing like that. We're all good over here.
Does anybody have a number 47 with the initials AK? That might be the easiest. That's about the extent of my lineup.
Freshman arm Jake Bechter, who's pretty good.
Listen, he wears number 47. He's also about 6'6", but don't get any ideas.
Yeah. So, oh man. All right.
Moving on to that catcher spot, like we mentioned, Monty, if you want to get that graphic up. Jacob Cozart started 52 games for him, hit 301. I know that Cannon Peebles is a big loss, but I mean, if you're going to replace him, I think this is a guy that can do it.
Yeah, do you want to slow down and let the graphic pop up?
There we go.
Got all excited. There you go.
I just get too excited. I saw the name Jacob, and it just.
I'm jumping. I love Jacob Cozart. He had such an. By the way, Jake, Tyler says he might need to slap you when he sees you in Dallas on the 23rd. So I approve that. Tyler, I'm a big fan of Tyler. So you might have to do it for everybody. Do it for America. But I love me some Jacob Cozart. I watched him with Team USA tryouts. I don't know what the point of tryouts are if you hit like Jacob Cozart did in training camp and don't make Team USA, because he went off. I think he hit something like 4 home runs in the stretch. It was absolutely a monster performance out of any of the guys there, and yet he doesn't make the cut. So he's arguably the best catcher in the country. I mean, I guess you could argue Cole Messina at South Carolina, but the defense, the all around game, I'm taking Jacob Cozart over Cole Messina. Apologies, Gamecock fans. Don't leave Jake for me. He's still enemy number 1 for you guys.
Yeah. Alex Sosa, I think, is another name to kind of watch. He DH'd in the scrimmage, so we might see him in that spot. But again, I think Jacob Cozart, his experience behind the plate, is going to be there and start just about every game, barring something kind of extreme happening. He's going to be back there. Grayson, who do you kind of also see taking a step forward behind Cozart?
Yeah, I mean, Cozart will undoubtedly be your centerpiece behind the plate. Like Monty said, he is probably, well, I'll keep my red tinted glasses off for just a second. He is one of the best catchers in the nation. Okay, he's the best. I mean, that's what the deal is. He is so good defensively. His bat really took a massive jump from freshman to sophomore year, expecting another jump here in his junior campaign. He's a stud. He's such a stud. And the reason I'll say Cannon Peebles took his talents out to Tennessee is because Cozart is so good that Peebles wasn't really going to be able to get many innings behind him this year. So I understand the decision, but that just speaks to how good Jacob Cozart truly is.
And it's
Yeah, we
another.
mentioned it in the Texas Tech series about guys maybe being pushed out or into certain spots to kind of set them up. I think that was kind of the issue here with Peebles as well. I think Cozart was planning to start over him.
And it's another similarity to Duke, by the way, that a freshman catcher is going to get a lot of looks at the plate as a DH because Alex Sosa is there's a lot of belief in him to be with his bat to get some time. So it's another similarity with Duke where we were talking about Mason Winslow, and now we're talking Alex Sosa as well. But it's a talented group.
Yep. Moving on kind of into the infield, Monty, as you kind of get that graphic up, we project Garrett Pennington, the transfer from the carcass that was Wichita State, to be the first baseman. Luke Nixon, the freshman, coming in to start at second. Brandon Butterworth at short, coming over from Western Carolina. And then Alec Makerwitz coming over from
Makarovich.
Makarevich.
Yeah.
Makarevich, there it is.
I knew when I was doing this, I was like, I need to take this from Jake so he doesn't butcher it, and I still let you do it. I'm sorry.
That's a name I've never seen spelled because when I saw ECU, they wore those purple uniforms that
And
just
you
say
couldn't
ECU.
read.
So I thought his last name was ECU, but I think he's a bat that I think plays really well into this lineup. He's got gap-to-gap power. He's not going to be the guy that really hits 20, 30 home runs, but he's got great power into the gaps and a switch hitter. I think that he's kind of the name that I'm circling in this lineup. Monty, I think I know where you're going to go. So Grayson, we'll go to you. Who's the lineup that you're the name that you're circling?
He better not take it.
I have a feeling I am, so I'm going to let you have it. In the infield, I'm super interested to see what Luke Nixon does at the plate. I've heard raving reports about him defensively, and that is why he's more than likely going to get that start at second base. I think any offense you get from him will probably be a bonus, just a freshman, but I think he can project out long-term as a very solid piece there at second base. You mentioned Makarevich coming over from ECU to play third base for us. Very excited about him. Of course, it adds a little something extra when you take a player from an in-state rival. Expecting pretty solid numbers from him this year at third. Butterworth at short, and I'm trying not to get in the habit of just naming dudes here, but Butterworth at short's another one. He has to be a key piece to this lineup, flipping it over or maybe even starting it off if he finds himself near the top. But defense as well. Defense is super crucial for this team, especially because it has really faulted us the last couple of years. So defense, NC State is known for they're going to hit year in and year out. That's become the narrative. Defense here is also very important.
Yeah, I mean, they dumped Throwaway Tommy last year, so I think the defense is going to improve in that aspect. But I did want to ask for some clarification. Do you think ECU and NC State are rivals? Do you consider them rivals?
Okay, allow me to clear the air. In baseball, I do really consider us rivals. Every time we play them, it's fun. And it is actually a crime that we don't get a weekend series with them every year. I'm actually extremely jealous of the light blue school up the street. I never say their name, that they play weekend series with ECU. I want to get in on that as some Wolfpackers here. But baseball, I do think we're a rival. Everything else, not so much.
Yeah, for those confused, that school that he's referring to is the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
I was confused. I thought he was going the
not
Tulane route because Tulane's conference opponents with ECU.
Oh, well, I appreciate Grayson letting me have this because I am all aboard the Garrett Pennington hype train. I've been talking about him since I saw him in October. He's a Wichita State transfer. And again, when I talk about buying into the hype of the fall, what he did in the scrimmages was just absolutely sensational. In the first game against Duke, the first part of the doubleheader, he reaches base 4 times. He's a triple shy of the cycle, and he was facing O'Shell, Santucci, Healy, Johnson. He's facing Duke's best arms, and he launched a moonshot off Jonathan Santucci. He then goes and gets a couple more extra base hits in the second game, double off the wall, and then when they play Walter State, he's hitting a home run, 111 miles per hour. So I am all in on Garrett Pennington with him and Jacob Cozart being the 3-4 guys in this lineup. I am all about him. So the Pennington hype train, I am on board, and I am just all about it. And then quickly, Brandon Butterworth, I know there's some concerns about his defense, but I did see some really slick plays against Duke. So obviously a couple slick plays here and there don't necessarily make the
eye test is a real thing, Monty. Don't discredit
eye
it. The eye
test. Yeah,
test is a real thing.
an eye test of 7 innings or 14 innings, I guess, and I'm like, I'm in.
All for it.
I'm all for it. Nothing else. Don't need anything else. I'm in.
I think it is weird that this might be the only infield that has a number 0 and a number 99 as a starter. So if nothing other than NC State being utterly weird, I'm very curious to see how the number 99 looks in a red jersey because it looked very strange on an ECU
Well,
jersey in purple and yellow.
If they're wearing their camos, you won't be able to see it. It's not a camo joke. You literally can't see the numbers on their. I realize it sounds like I was making a joke, but you cannot see the camo numbers very well.
They have needed some kind of white outline around those red numbers for quite some time now.
Yeah, I realized when Jake laughed, he thought I was making a joke. No, it was driving me nuts that we couldn't tell who was in the bullpen because we couldn't see their number properly.
Yeah. You know, Monty, I wouldn't put it past you to make a camo joke.
That's fair. I'll allow it.
Let's see what the camo looks like as Google gets loading up.
While we're doing that, we can start looking at the outfield here. And Eli Serrano is the guy I'm going to circle. He is making the move from first base. He had a very, very good freshman campaign that I think gets overlooked a bit because of what Cannon Peoples did, his teammate. And it's similar, to I just lost my train of thought. I apologize. Eli Serrano, though, 292, 12 doubles, 7 home runs. He's going to be taken over in center field. I expect him to make a big jump from year 1 to year 2.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the names to watch. I think Josh Hogue in left is another one, as he kind of has had very, very limited exposure, very underrated transfer coming over from JUCO. JUCO guys play a little bit different than D3 guys, so expect him to not have too big of a fall off there. Unfortunately, Santa Fe cleared their website, so we don't know how good of a hitter he was. But I assume if he's at NC State that he knows how to hit the ball. But Grayson, who's the name that you're kind of circling here to take a step forward in this NC State lineup?
It is undoubtedly Eli Serrano, and he's such a good hitter. And I don't think the numbers would truly tell you that from his freshman year, but just a pure hitter. He can go deep in the count. He can fend off tough pitches inside that a pitcher really tries to break guys on. He can do it all. He can hit for a little bit of power. I expect that to take a massive uptick here in 2024. Him switching positions from first to center, I think he'll do it seamlessly. He's such a rangy, long athlete that I think he can play some stellar defense out there as well. But Eli Serrano's bat, I think, is what I'm most excited for to see, taking a step forward here this year.
Worth noting too, these are all lefty bats as well. So if you're looking for righty-lefty splits, you're not going to find it in the outfield, as all these guys are left-handed. I think that there's a lot to like too behind. I think Chase Nixon's going to slot in as the DH. He played in 32 games last year, hit 319 for him. I think you can go ahead and pencil him in there. And I'm excited to see what this NC State lineup does. Is they are a very talented lineup outside in the outfield. Monty, I know that the backups, some of the fans are saying that it's wrong. What are you kind of expecting to push for playing time in that NC State outfield?
Honestly, it's hard to say. I did see Schaffner play in right field in the scrimmages, and Nixon could play the corner outfields, and I expect him to be the first guy off the bench. But for some of the backups, it's a little bit harder to tell who is going to be where necessarily. So I'm not surprised that what we have might be incorrect on the backups, but I'm just pleased that we hit the starters. I'll take that as a win.
Robert Nedry is a name that I think you left off to as well. He's a freshman coming in. I don't think he'll get a ton of at-bats this year, but as we look towards the future, his lefty bat, I think, plays very, very well in the type of brand that NC State baseball plays. But, Monty, before we close the book on the staff, how would you kind of rate this lineup for NC State? We gave Duke a B-. What do you give NC State?
So it's tricky. Grayson mentioned it earlier that NC State just always finds a way to hit under the Coach Elliott, and yeah, I'm gonna give him a B. I think it could upgrade. I mean, I like the middle of the order lineup of Pennington, Cozart, Serrano. I really like those guys, and if Butterworth and Hogue can really be top of the order guys, it could make a difference. So I really like their starters. Beyond that, it's a little tricky to say the bench depth, but I'm a big fan. I'm going to go with a B with a chance for them to be up to a B plus.
I'll go ahead and slot in and take that B plus. I think that they have one of the better top end lineups with Cozart, and I think Nixon's bat is going to play really well this year.
Which one?
Luke Nixon.
They are brothers, and the sons of former Red Sox legend Trot Nixon. I don't know how we didn't throw that in there. It was sitting right there, but continue.
I know I kept waiting for it. You had it in the notes. I was like, oh, Bonnie added this note. I guess he's going to add them. That is World Series champion Trot Nixon, Monty.
Similar to World Series champion Trey Turner.
That's right.
Luke Nixon, the freshman, I think he's the bat that I think takes a very, very big step forward as he kind of brings that mature approach. The depth does scare me as there isn't a lot kind of behind the starters. But again, if the starters are playing every day, that's really not a problem. So that's why I give him a B+. Grayson, I'm going to ask for 2 scores here. I'm going to ask for a red-tinted glasses score and a non-red tinted glasses score.
Red tinted, I'll say A-. I think I'm maybe higher on the depth than you guys might be, understandably so. But I think when you look at guys like Chase Nixon will go on random stretches where he's the best hitter on the team, which is kind of bizarre as, first guy off the bench. I think he could vie for some playing time, maybe some platoon time in left field with Hogue this year. But the depth for me, it's okay. And not to mention Noah Sol's out and right as well. He's been a very steady leadoff hitter for us. There's been some whispers of some two-way action. Some of the pitchers getting some BP early spring. They maybe can see some time in the outfield as well. So red tinted, I'll say A-. I'll take the glasses off and I'll go B+. I think it's a solid lineup. The heart of the order is a lot to be excited about. I think there's plenty of power from Pennington, Serrano, Cozart, of course, is a fixture there. The bookends of the lineup is a lot where my concern is. Outside of Souls, what are you going to get from Butterworth? What are you going to get from, maybe Hogue at the bottom of the lineup or Nixon at the bottom of the lineup? Still don't quite know yet, but I think there's plenty of potential. And I think, for the most part, I'll go B+.
Monty, you're kind of our expert for names. Is Brendan Butterworth related to Mrs. Butterworth at all? Do you know if there's any relation?
I'm not dignifying that with a response. I will say Garrett Pennington, ACC Player of the Year. No, I'm just that's too far. But I am on the hype train. I'm still very excited. But yeah, it's funny Grayson mentioned the two-way guys. It looks like there's the potential for a ton of two-way guys. Yep. So it was interesting to see who's going to be two-way and who's not, and we'll find out, I guess. But transitioning to pitchers, I think we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Breaking news today. Grayson, hit us.
The official unfortunate news coming out of Raleigh today, senior starter, he's been our Saturday guy, Matt Willitson, has suffered an injury to his elbow. He will more than likely miss the entire season. I don't think the door is quite closed on all of 2024 right now, but if I had to bet on it, I'd say he will probably miss the entire year. And that's a tough loss. I mean, you look at a guy that led your team in both innings and strikeouts last year. He's been an absolute workhorse as far as starters go. So do we have a lot of young, exciting depth? Yes, but none of them have the experience that Matt Willitson does. So certainly wish all the best to Matt, hoping for a speedy recovery. If we can see him in 2024 in any capacity, I think it'd be quite a feat, but it's a brutal loss. I don't think it completely derails the season, but you can't really emphasize how big a loss it really is. Yeah,
for me, that one of the reasons I ranked NC State so high, and it felt really nice as I was filling out projected rosters that this is the one team I was like, I know who their starters are going to be, or at least the top 4, because Logan Whitaker's coming back as well, a starter from last year. He's probably going to be the closer, but now you're going to be sliding somebody like Shane Van Dam from the Tuesday slot. Now you're going to have to see who's going to step up for midweeks.
I just want to give you credit, Monty, for filling out the graphic, being very flexible with the injury and being the true professional of upgrading that. But I think Dominic Fritton's going to be the Friday night guy. A lot of these ACC teams, as we kind of go through this, they really struggle to kind of figure out who their Friday night guy is. And I think NC State doesn't have that problem. He started 9 games for him last year, the 3.59 ERA, 75 strikeouts and 62 in a third innings. He is a draft eligible sophomore, so look for him to kind of break onto the scene there and raise his draft stock. And then again, Shane Van Dam, he's a guy that even 24 hours ago wasn't going to be in the rotation. How does he kind of react to now taking that step forward and being there with Whittleson going down? I think that there's a lot to like about this NC State staff, though. I think it's a very balanced unit.
It's funny because I don't know if Tyler Jennings is still watching. He had commented a little bit earlier, but he and I were at the Duke game, the Duke scrimmage, and I think at one point we were both like, "Who? This guy's from SUNY Cortland?" Because he's got some filth.
Yeah.
And we both kind of looked at each other, was like, "Who is this guy?" And he's got some stuff, and I don't know how some of these small schools keep these guys a secret, and then all of a sudden they just pop up out of nowhere, but. He's going to get a chance now with the Willetson injury, and of course, I don't know how we didn't mention the legendary 2021 ace Sam Highfill, who I keep waiting. I want him back so bad because I did a story on him midway through last year, thinking he was back, and he's getting closer. And I'm hoping he gets back to that 2021 form.
Yeah, Monty, I think the name that I'm going to circle too kind of is Hollis Fanning. He was kind of the back end of that Cannon Peebles trade transferring over from Tennessee. The 1.26 ERA in very, very limited runs, so didn't have a ton of pitching there. But I think he's kind of a name as a graduate guy that'll eat up innings for the NC State stuff. Sorry, Grace, that one was just too low-hanging of a fruit.
I was like, well, and it's funny, you went into the bullpen. I mean, again, if you're looking at this graphic, you're seeing – they're much deeper than last year, because it felt like last year they had their starters, their 4 starters, and then they had Justin Lawson at the back end, and then they didn't have much in between except Rio Britton, and it down the stretch that hurt them a little bit.
Yeah, they definitely answered all of those kind of with the freshman class, which is something that we really haven't seen a lot of these kind of higher end Power Fives do. They went out and attacked it through the freshman class. Grayson, what's kind of the name that you're circling here in this rotation?
Yeah, certainly a lot of the buzz around this team this year is the pitching depth. And that's, including this unfortunate injury news that we got today. But, you look at a guy like Shane Van Dam that will likely step up into a weekend role, a transfer from SUNY Cortland, but somehow he's throwing mid-90s. I don't know how you even end up at Cortland when you're throwing that hard. But
right.
We are more than happy to have him here in Raleigh now. Can he project out and be a solid starter for us? We're going to have to see. I like the possibility of that, though. And then you mentioned Dom Fritton, my podcast co-host and I. We call him Rom-Com Dom because he has quite the flair for the dramatic. We're big on nicknames, of course, as long as they don't relate to.
I was going to say, you're setting us up again. We're going to come up.
Sam Highfill is known as the mayor of Apex. He's from a town called Apex that's very local to Raleigh. Looking forward to see what he looks like this year. Of course, he was injured a bit in 2022. Just couldn't quite return to form last year in 2023. Really need him to be a leader on this staff here in 2024. You mentioned Whitaker kind of bumping back to the bullpen. That news sort of surprised me. He's been our Friday night guy these past couple years. He's been a very steady starter. I think he can kind of do a little bit of everything. We'll see what he looks like out of the bullpen. I think he may, you might see him get some starter innings now with the Willetson news, of course, but the exciting freshman depth, I'll finally answer your question here. You look at guys like Chance Mako, a freshman that very well could have been drafted. Ryan Marone, that was drafted, turned down some money to come to Raleigh. You mentioned Hollis Fanning. He's not a freshman, but a senior transfer from Tennessee. He's going to be a fixture in the back end of the bullpen. Carson Kelly's another guy. Need him to take a big step in the back end of the bullpen. Garrett Payne returns from Tommy John surgery. Garrett Payne infamously started the game where we only had 13 players left in Omaha. He is back this year, looking to see what we can get out of him. Other names here, Shafter, you mentioned he might see some time in the outfield. He's one of those potential two-way guys. Really came on strong last year in the Columbia Regional, showed some stuff even after that game sort of got away from the Wolfpack. But the pitching depth as a whole, a lot of unproven talent, but it's talent nonetheless. And we can't wait to see what they can do.
Yeah, there's a lot to like from this NC State staff. Me personally, I like how many Jakes that they went out and got. This seems to be a very Jake-heavy team. Monty, let's go ahead and move on to that schedule, buddy.
I was going to talk about how Jacob Duden is a dude, and
not
just because of his name. I know you got to. You see how many names are up there? He didn't go through all of them.
What about old Winchester Scott there? As we get a little gun name in.
Win Scott, yeah, he's a little crafty lefty out of the bullpen. He's probably one of the best personalities on the team. I think he's very well liked. At least that's what it seems like on Instagram. But he's the guy. He got some time last year. I think he'll probably fight to see some innings on the mound. You could see him though, and we'll see what he can do with them.
Jake's trying to get him to transfer with that nickname.
Yeah.
Good luck.
All right, we'll move on to the schedule. A lot of great pitching, a lot of unproven versus where Duke's is a little bit more proven, but a lot to be excited about this pitching staff.
Moving on, non-conference games against VCU. They head out to the island. They play Hawaii. It's, I think, one of the more underrated Big West teams. And then Townsend before they jump right into big ACC play with Boston College, Georgia Tech, Duke. I mean, they have one of the more favorable slates to kind of open up ACC play. I think that they need to kind of stack a lot of these wins early on in the season for NC State.
Yeah, I thought they had a little bit more favorable schedule than some of the teams I've seen that are getting some tough ACC starts. Boston College at home, Georgia Tech on the road. Again, Georgia Tech may be better than we think, but it seems more favorable than Duke. I think is Jacob Duden is he likes the nickname we gave him, so so gotta love it. But yeah, I really like the Duke series is one I'm circling, one I'd like to go to. And obviously I can say at the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill series, it's going to be a Thursday. I think Jake's trying to go to that one and join his fellow Jakes and Jacobs.
Jake, if you're going to do that, you better wear red, buddy.
Hey, I mean, red. I don't even own baby blue, so you don't have to worry about me there.
All right, we're all straight.
Grayson, who's kind of the series that you're really kind of circling and saying, okay, when we play this team, we'll know how good this NC State team is?
Well, I think it's kind of interesting that we don't see Wake Forest until the very last series of the year. But before then, I'm looking at that Clemson series on the road. I think that's an interesting one. Clemson really came on strong after they saw us last year. I think we kind of lit their fire, and they went on to have an incredible end of the season. We talked earlier about the gauntlet that Duke had to face in the beginning of the season. NC State's schedule is very much the opposite. Boston College, Georgia Tech, then Duke, and then Notre Dame. I like kind of easing into this schedule, and then obviously on the back half you have teams like Louisville and Clemson and the boys in baby blue. But I think this is a very favorable schedule. I think the Hawaii trip in the beginning is a little fun vacation of sorts in February. It's good to get out in some warm weather. I think this is a perfect schedule for this type of team. Some talent that needs to rise up and prove themselves. I think there's plenty of opportunity without getting completely overbearing. But depending on where we fall, where the chips fall by the time we see Wake Forest at the midpoint of May, this series is in Raleigh. If we have a solid resume at that point, I expect the Doak to be packed, as it literally always is. Feed me Chase Burns. I want to see Chase Burns with some substantial things on the line in Raleigh in mid-May.
It's funny you keep mentioning Wake Forest, but if they're on the bubble going into those last 2 weekends, going to Charlottesville is going to be tough. A tough task. So
see, Monty, you see losses, but me and Grayson see opportunities.
I didn't say losses. I was going to say that. I was going to say if they're on the bubble going into those last 2 weekends, it's going to be make or break. It's going to give them a great opportunity to get to the tournament. You didn't even let me finish. You just tried to throw me under the bus to NC State fans and players, and I will not have that. You can't get thrown
under the bus. You see what you're wearing.
That's true. Trey Turner. I got it. I'm repping it.
I really circle that Hawaii series. I mean, they go out, their body's going to be at midnight. They're going to be playing baseball at the beach and tons of distractions around. I think that's the one where if they can go out there and take care of business, that's the sign of a mature team to head out halfway across the world even and take care of business. So that's one that I'm kind of circling for them. And then again, like you mentioned, they better stack up some wins in the ACC because that back half, those are going to be against teams that have a lot to play for, and they're going to be tough series to try and come out and get wins out of those.
You mentioned it earlier. I'm surprised they don't even do it like a 2-game series against ECU. They literally
That's what I'm saying. It feels absolutely criminal because the two fan bases, we really get after each other, and a series, but a full weekend series
would be ideal, but
absolute best. It would be fun.
Even if you do what like Florida and Florida State do and have a 3-game series but divided into midweeks, that would still be nice. But the fact that you only get one and it's just one place or the other is a bit.
Play one in Raleigh, play one in Greenville, and then meet in the middle and play one at the Carolina Mudcats Stadium. It makes too much sense.
Yeah,
they play a really, really tough midweek season too as well. They play Coastal. You mentioned ECU,
Campbell.
I guess
UNCW is good.
that's the luxury of living in the Carolinas is you really don't have to go too far to find somebody to play.
The home of college baseball.
How good is Carolina? I shouldn't say Carolina. The state of Carolina's baseball. I almost
it's the
said
second best in the
there.
country, I would say.
No, it's right now. I think it's top. I'm sorry, you're Texas boys. It's down. I mean, Carolina, North Carolina, and especially if you take both states, North Carolina and South Carolina, which would still be smaller than
Clemson
Texas.
too.
Yep, Clemson, South Carolina, Coastal, and then all those North Carolina teams. I'm taking them over those Texas teams. Just give me an Omaha of 8 North Carolina and South Carolina teams. I'd be pretty happy.
Be a good time.
That's a hot take. I think a lot of people will be upset with that because it only have one SEC team, but
it'd be the most fun SEC team too as well. Monty, as we kind of wrap this up, floor ceiling predictions for NC State. What's the ceiling? What's the floor? What do you see happening?
Why do I gotta go first?
All right, we'll start with Grayson. Then.
Oh man, putting me on the spot. Okay,
yep.
Floor.
You already have it in your head. You got those glasses on.
Yeah.
National
Floor,
championship.
I mean, you look at the experience on this team, or I guess in some cases lack thereof. I think the floor is probably a 3 seed again, just like last season. I can't imagine this team missing the tournament. I think things would have to go preposterously bad for that to happen.
Or I wouldn't say that with the NCAA's history of.
Hey, I got Cohen out of there, man. I don't know what Cohen's vendetta was against NC State, but he's out of there.
I'll tell you what, too. The ACC vendetta, the NCAA vendetta is not just limited to baseball either. Some football beef. We got some basketball beef. Well, we're always just on the bubble for basketball, but it's not limited to baseball. But I think baseball has had the worst, you suffered the most damage there, of course. But, talking about floor here, again, I think it's probably a 3 seed. I think I definitely see them in the tournament. They have enough talent, of course, to make it there. Ceiling, I want to see the ceiling being them hosting. I think probably, preseason poll-wise, I think I slated them at 22, which is actually lower than a lot of publications. I think CBC has them at 16-ish right now.
Yes, 16. Yep. Duke is 15 and NC State is 16.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm kind of, I guess, downplaying it in a sense where I rated them at 22, but I think this team can host. I think you could see them really rise up and some of the talent truly develops as the year goes on. So ceiling is hosting, floor is 3 seed.
Monty, I'll go ahead and slide in here a second. I think that Grayson kind of hit the nail on the head. I don't see a world with the balance of the lineup and the pitching staff of them missing the tournament. I think that they're going to be around that middle of the pack ACC, like we saw in the CBC poll. And I think that they're going to be in the thick of it a ton with especially how the schedule sets up. I think that their ceiling is hosting. And I think the best prediction is, again, like I said with Duke, I think that they have the potential to be a very, very dangerous 2 in one of these other South Carolina, North Carolina regionals.
So you ready for mine? It's going to be pretty wide ranging because I don't want to say this, but they can get screwed by the NCAA. I can see it, man. I can see it. I don't want to say they're in because the NCAA has screwed my predictions before as well. Okay, that's why I'm hedging my bets. But on the flip side, I could see this team now. It's funny when we mention this, what their ceiling could be. Sometimes we're talking about regular season success when they talk about hosting, but I think that it could take a second to get this pitching staff going. Oh, yeah. But then once it goes, I think they could get in the tournament as a dangerous 2 and make it to Omaha with the way this pitching staff could be. And that I think is even, I think that's more realistic of a ceiling than just hosting. Cause I don't see them being able to put everything together immediately, and that may hurt them in the hosting chances later on, but it's not about how you start. It's about how you finish. And I could see NC State making a return to Omaha and not getting coronavirus this time.
Had to bring it up, didn't you?
The NCAA.
You talk about a situation. It's funny. Sometimes you see on Twitter, it's like, what's the one loss you'll never get over? That will never,
it's not even a loss,
ever be topped for me. That whole situation, my heart will never heal from that unless we go and win one. Then maybe. But
I
will
mean,
never go.
NC State as a school should be claiming that as a national championship.
See, I don't like that though, because I think
I just think it's funny. I think that's why they should do it for the memes.
I think Mississippi State sold their soul for that championship,
so
so
that's
they
the
wouldn't let
thing.
anybody claim it.
That's the thing is like, I don't want to disrespect Mississippi State because we all know they had a hell of a squad. And I just hate that we didn't have the opportunity to play Mississippi State for the title. I don't like claiming things. I still always hate the UCF claim title way back when for football. Never sat well with me. I don't want to see NC State fans claim that title, although, of course, we all know what happened. But I hate that we didn't get afforded the opportunity to play for it. I'll say that.
Monty, as we kind of close the book on part 1 of our Tobacco Road series, any final thoughts for Duke and NC State?
This was the one the show I was most excited about because I'm high on both these teams. I'm defending them constantly in our CBC group chat, and I don't know why I need to defend them because obviously other people are high on them as well. We've ranked them 15 and 16. I don't know why some people are like, well, I don't think they're good, and it's like, well, you ranked them high. So there's a reason these two teams are getting the love they're getting, and now they've got to go out and prove me right, or I'm gonna hold a grudge.
Monty's gonna burn his Trey Turner jersey.
No, never. 2019 World Series champion Trey Turner, absolutely not.
Monty's profile pic, Trey Turner.
Yep. Yeah, he was a bit intoxicated in that photo. And
why you had to put him on blast?
It was just so funny because he was clean shaven too. So like I think he was 26 at the time and coming back from an injury. And I was like, man, if nobody knew who you were, they would not be serving you alcohol because you look about 15.
when he was like in his young years at State, he looked like maybe 13 years old, but he was swiping 40 bags. It was unreal.
That's why he's got to have a little bit of facial hair. If you guys see him at the big league level, he looks a little bit older now because he's just got a little bit of that fuzz.
Scruff.
And it makes, he's a dad, so he's got to look older now.
Grayson, final thoughts for your NC State Wolf Pack.
Whoa, that was a close call, but no, I'm just excited, man. Like we're 9 days today, 8 days tomorrow. I need NC State baseball in my life, and I mentioned basketball is always on the bubble. Ugh. I'm a baseball guy. I need the weather to warm up. I need to see folks pack the doke. I can't wait to see it. Get into some ACC ball and really see what all this buzz is about. I want to see the pitching depth in action and some of these freshmen step up and make names for themselves. But I just can't wait to get going, man.
How many home games are you going to go to? All of them?
As many as I can. Yeah. I don't think I can commit to every single game, but if you know me, I'll be out there.
I've been very optimistic with my travel schedule for the spring. It's going to be really interesting to see how many of those games I'm able to convert with everything else going on. So I'm hopefully going to get down there for a couple games. I don't think I've been to the Doak yet. I think I managed to see NC State a bunch of times elsewhere, but I'm looking forward to getting down there and seeing them. And Jake is hopefully going to see him. He didn't know it was a Thursday-Saturday series.
I know. I didn't realize that. I was really excited. I was going to take a mental health day, head out to NC State. But I think that's all we have the time for. We're going to have CBC Texas. We came out with our top 23 where we ranked every single Texas team. We're going to have a show where we break that down. And then me and Monty, we're going to be on the weekend rotation going over you guys' bold predictions. So if you have any bold predictions, a lot of them are calling for me to be fired. So if you want to make them personal and not related to college baseball teams, those are welcome as well. But again, Monty, Grayson, thanks for joining us. We'll see y'all next week.
Yep, for our last show.
Go Pack, baby.